I always click play or click go and then like have a mental breakdown. All right. Hi, this is Brianna here at Books and Briars. Today I wanted to give you a what? What? uh Hi, this is Brianna here at Books and Briars. Today I've come to you to wish you a happy Monday. Today is Monday, October 12th, meaning that the hashtag ayearathon readathon is officially over. This week has been a great reading week for me, and I am super excited to share how I did. So in my TBR last week, I said that I wanted to read 7 books. Of those 7, I completed 5, and I am really proud of myself for that because that is actually more books than I read last month. So yeah, go me. And I am also really happy with all 5 of those books. I greatly enjoyed all of the ones that I read and the ones that I didn't read or that I didn't finish this week. So the first book that I finished this week was George by Alex Gino. This book was the easiest for me to finish because I was listening to it on audiobook, and that audiobook is only like 2 hours long. So it was short, and it was, I don't want to say fun, because that book made me cry, and it made me cry quite a few times. I intended to listen to it on my way to and from work, but I had to stop listening to it in public because I was crying over quite a few scenes. And it was just really emotional and impactful, and I greatly enjoyed it. And it was something that is going to stay with me forever. So George is the story of a 4th grader who is basically trying to come to terms not only with herself, but with getting everyone around her to accept her as being a girl when she has the body of a boy. And so everyone thinks that she should be a boy. And there are just certain times in this book where I started thinking that this could be my students, because I teach 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And I just think like the language that is used in the classroom is so nonchalant for us as teachers, but for the students, it could be really harmful. And that thought has stayed with me, and it will stay with me. And it is something that I'm going to be thinking about probably every day, probably for the rest of my life. And I think that's what this book needs to do, is it needs to introduce that doubt into the language that we use, because it is not the same for everybody. And something that we don't think about, that we take for granted, could be really harmful to the people around us. And this book is such a great way of emphasizing that, especially for transgender youth. And it's something that, like I said, it's going to stay with me forever. And that's a really great trait for a book to have. So I gave that book 4 out of 5 stars, and I had to knock a star off simply because of the gratuitous description of vomit. Yeah, there was a lot of that, and I don't like it, so 4 out of 5 stars. Thanks. The second book that I finished was the group read for this week, and that was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin O'Leary Saenz. And this book was great. It was so nostalgic. Like, it's set in the 1980s, and I wasn't even alive, but it still got that like nostalgic American feel to it that I really enjoyed, especially being abroad. And I gave that book 5 out of 5 stars because I just loved it so much. I loved the characters, I loved the plot, I loved the action. The one thing that I questioned that made me hesitate in giving this book 5 out of 5 stars instead of like 4.8 or something is I wasn't super satisfied with the ending. Like, I wasn't upset and I did enjoy it. I just had gotten a impression from the characters earlier on that was not like realized at the end, and I wish it had been. And I think I'm going to do a book talk where I can talk more in depth about this book, because I really want to have this discussion and I think it's important, but I can't do it without spoilers, and I don't want to put spoiler warnings in this video because it's a wrap-up. I don't want to deal with that. No. So I'll probably be putting up a book talk maybe later this month once I have more time to get my head around all of the ideas I have about it. But yeah, I greatly enjoyed that. 5 out of 5 stars. And then on Friday, I also read the first of the graphic novels I was reading, which is the 4th book in the Dark Earth series, Legacy. And that book is 120 pages. It's short, it's sweet, and it was the fluff that I needed from the heavy hitters I'd been reading all week. And it was just a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So 3 out of 5 stars. On Saturday, I basically sat down and picked up Afflicted by Brandon Shire, and I just read my way straight through that. And that book has a brilliant use of language to convey the ideas of a blind man, and as well as his sighted companions, and how much different it is. Like, you could feel the shift between characters, because when the narrator was focused entirely on the blind man, any and all sight cues were gone. Everything was through scent and touch and sound, and how he perceived the world without sight. Whereas with the other characters, you would get all the sighted cues that, as a non-blind person, I'm accustomed to. And it was just a brilliant way of keeping the balance in the book. Like, it wasn't entirely in a foreign perspective. Like, it wasn't entirely sight blind, which it wasn't entirely blind, but it also wasn't like about a blind man without seeing his perspective, without hearing what it's like to perceive the world as he does. And it was just it was a great bit of writing, and I'm contemplating picking up the second one because I really liked it. But I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars because I did really like it, but there were parts of it that I felt could have been improved upon. There was some gratuitous sex that... It was gratuitous sex. I didn't see much of a point to it. There were some scenes that were, like, necessary to the plot, but there was also just... I didn't care for it. On Saturday, I also finished the 5th book of the Dark Earth series, and again, it was a short, fluffy read to balance out some of the more intense books that I'd picked up, and I enjoyed it. It was just fun. So 3 out of 5 stars for that one as well. I feel like the Dark Earth series would be more enjoyable if I could just read it all at once instead of having to go to new books or having to purchase different things if I want to continue reading. And also, these books are like 90% graphic novel and then 10% short story, because the last chapter of each book is told in a short story form instead of as a manga. And I felt like that shift wasn't supported, and I wish it had been either fully graphic or fully novel instead of the weird conglomeration of it. So those are the 5 books that I finished. The 2 books that I did not finish were How Poetry Saved My Life, A Hustler's Memoir by Amber Dawn. This book, I read the intro and knew that I would need to take my time if I wanted to fully appreciate this book. So I read the introduction and I set it aside. I'll read it some other time. And the second was 15 Ways to Stay Alive by Daphne Gottlieb. And this poetry collection is one that I greatly enjoyed, and I will probably finish in the near future, as in like the next few days. I am currently halfway through it, but I didn't start reading it until Friday. And if I'd started on Monday, perhaps I would have finished, but I just need more space between sittings and reading of these poems. because, again, they're rather emotionally intense and they wring you out as a reader to be reading them. And I don't want to just sit down and read the next 60 so pages of this book. I want to be able to space it out with lighter reads. So I will probably be finishing that in the near future, but I have not finished it yet. So those are the books that I read this week, and I really loved doing this readathon, and I hope to take part in another one, perhaps next month, where the theme will be mythology, I think. I don't know, I'd have to check that. You can find out on the Goodreads page. But that is all that I've for you today, so see you next time. Bye! But that's all I have for you today. If you participated in this readathon, tell me what your favorite book that you read was below. Or if you just read any of these books or you have any questions or opinions, share them. I want to know. I have nothing else to say on this fine Monday, so I will tell you I hope you have a great week. See you next time.